Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Fully Charged Gardener. Thank you very much for tuning in again. I really do appreciate it. So in today's video we are going to be talking about summer pruning wisteria. One of the questions I get asked all the time here in the gardens is how do you get your wisteria to flower so well? And one of the key things to getting a wisteria to flower is correct pruning, and it is so simple. So let's go and do some pruning and I'll show you just how we do it. So to the pruning itself. Now, one of the key things I really want to emphasize during this video is don't be afraid when it comes to pruning. Wisteria especially is tough as old boots, so you're not really going to do a lot of harm unless you just go right to the bottom and lop it off. So most places will tell you that August is the prime time to be pruning wisteria, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we're in a location, and I brought you down here to the pergola because this is actually usually an aisle for a lot of people's weddings. So if I was to wait till August, I mean, we're at the 1st of June now, so if I was to wait till August, this thing will have gone across to the other side of the pergola and wrapped itself around, and brides wouldn't be able to get through for their ceremony, which wouldn't go down too well. At the moment we are closed due to the virus, which is one of the reasons why this has been left to grow, and it gives me an ideal opportunity to show you with some decent material. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is you don't have to wait till August to prune it. One of my pet hates actually is wisterias that are, you know, 6 foot off of a building and just out of control. You can keep wisteria nicely controlled as I've got here. So anyway, to the pruning, which is what you guys want to know about. So basically, as a general rule for summer pruning, you prune to 4 or 5 buds, and I'll bring you in for a close-up, and basically all you're doing is going back to where the new growth has started, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then snip it off. Just like that. It is important to have sharp secateurs. Whenever you're doing any pruning, sharp secateurs, you want a nice clean cut, or snips as I like to call them. So again, I'll show you from a distance, and we're just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there we go. As you can see, cutting back to 5 buds, the growth is still quite a long way off of the pergola, and that's just no good for us here. That's going to be catching people as they walk through, especially as this wood ripens, becomes a lot stiffer, misses. It's going to be catching people's eyes. And also what we want to do here with this pergola is keep the wisteria quite tight to the structure. One of my pet hates is when you see wisterias on buildings and they're just 6 foot off the building, and it's going to be a nightmare because it's just going to pull itself off eventually. There's a lot of weight in these wisteria vines once they mature, so you can keep them quite neat and compact. Now, I already made a couple of cuts here earlier, so I initially did the 5 buds, and I've actually taken them back to 3 buds. So as you can see, what we've got here is a nice neat plant, and you'll probably find you'll have to come back and prune a couple more times in the season on a structure like this, because as the new shoots appear, because quite often when you've made a cut, that'll decide, no, I'm going again, and it'll put out another shoot, which is why we come and do a second pruning in winter, but that's for another video. So you might want to subscribe to the channel just to catch that video when I make that one later on. So anyway, what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring you in for some close-ups on the pruning, and I'll talk a bit more about it. So basically, all we're doing by pruning is refocusing the plant's energy from putting on vegetative growth into setting buds for flowers. That's why we're doing it. And again, just to demonstrate here, I've cut this back to the 5 buds, which all the books will tell you to do. If you want to cut it to 7 buds, feel free. If you want to cut it back to 4 buds, feel free. On here, I cut it back to 3 buds. Again, that's because on this pergola we want to keep the plant tight to the pergola, maintain the aesthetic of the plant when it's not flowering as much as when it is flowering. You've got to keep these wisterias under control, especially on buildings and things like that. I will make a separate video about that. You definitely don't want to let wisteria grow behind things like downpipes, because it will eventually push them off the wall. Anyway, let's do some more pruning. Another common pruning mistake is people, and I'll do this for demonstration purposes only, will take a leaf and go, oh, I'll prune that. That will achieve nothing. Basically all you've done there is taken away one of the plant's solar panels when you think about it like that. No good just pruning leaves off, doesn't achieve anything. Stick to pruning these stems and this growth. That is what's going to focus the plant's energy into these buds, and that is where your flowers are going to come from. Don't be pruning leaf stems like that, it's just not going to achieve anything. Something else I just want to show you while we cut this one back. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll cut back to this one. Now, one common mistake people will make is they will make their cut. So we've cut back to a bud here. There's another bud just here. People will make a cut in between the bud like that. You do not want to be doing this. Always cut back to a bud, because what that will do, by cutting back to a bud, it will prevent the risk of that wood dying back into the bud, which could cause infection in the plant. But not only that, it looks horrible and scruffy, whereas that looks nice and neat. So again, always prune back to a bud, not in between. So I'll show you again. Here, hopefully you can see this. In between a bud, bad. Down to a bud, good. So I'm sure you'll agree that this all looks much neater now that it's had a little bit of a prune, and if a bride was getting married down here, she wouldn't be getting whacked in the face with all these excess growth. Now, let's just recap on a couple key things when it comes to wisteria pruning. Number one, sharp secateurs, snips. Always use sharp tools for that nice clean cut. Always prune back to a bud. And again, like I was saying before, it doesn't matter if you cut back to 7 buds, 5 buds. We do 3 buds here to keep the plants nice and tight back and keep this spiral shape. Again, I will do some footage of that just to show you. So you can keep wisteria under control with pruning. And again, that pruning will focus the plant's energy back into those buds, which will then produce the flowers. Now again, talking about plants' energy, believe it or not, wisteria is a legume, like peas and things like that, part of the Fabaceae family. So they have little nodules on the roots which actually fix nitrogen, which means the plant can produce its own nitrogen, which is one of the reasons why it's so efficient at growing so rapidly. So if you do want to feed your plants, don't feed it with a high nitrogen feed. Feed with a high potash feed. That's what's going to help with flower production, basically. Also, at the moment, we are very dry. So it's really important to keep your wisterias well watered, but don't water them so much that they are sat in water. They do prefer well-drained soil. And as you can see here, we're in a nice sunny position. Wisteria thrives in a sunny spot. So those are the key things really. And then again, we do prune wisteria more than once a year. And going back to that, like I say, we're in June at the moment, and ordinarily I'd probably be pruning back in May, to be honest. It all depends on the year really. And the thing is, if you prune early, you're likely to have to prune more than twice a year basically, because the plants will just keep regrowing. But another benefit of summer pruning and pruning a little bit earlier is you may get a second flush of flowers, because you're focusing the plant's energy back into those buds rather than putting out this massive vegetative growth. You may get a second flowering, which is really exciting because everybody loves a wisteria flower. I will do another video on wisteria training, because that's very important, and I will also do a video on wisteria winter pruning again, which is really important. So to answer one more question which people ask all the time is, you know, do I have to do that second pruning? Can't I just do it all in the summer, prune it back to 2 to 3 buds? Guarantee, if you do that, you're still going to be back in the winter pruning it again, because it's going to put on even more growth. So you can try and be lazy about it, but it's not that difficult to prune twice a year, and it is a really satisfying job because, you know, come on, how good does that look? So anyway, that's basics of wisteria pruning and how to get your wisteria pruning like as here. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in again. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.